some management had told Time for Three, and myself as well, it's like, there's no place in the world for your music. It wasn't until right before the recording, when we were diving in, that it's like, okay, I can see an angle on this. We put this record out there, and people started listening. People started loving it, and that was already just like, oh man, there's no greater feeling than that. Then of course the nomination happened, and there was another kind of pure bliss moment.
Charles Yang.
What's up?
Welcome to Think Music.
You're
officially the first violinist on the show.
I'm the first violinist?
You're the first violinist.
I'm the first violinist in Time for Three too. Just so you know.
By the way, thank you for walking all the way across the street.
It was a
We're
big
neighbors.
deal. We are neighbors.
We're neighbors.
We share one gourmet garage.
We could almost high five over Amsterdam,
we should just get a zip line going,
that could work.
Yeah,
that could work.
We could.
So there's so many things I want to talk to you about today, but before we dive in, could you give us, just for those who maybe aren't musicians, don't know, are new to this podcast, could you give us just like a little bit of your musical background?
Yeah, I'm a musician, just like you. I'm a violinist. I sing and I dabble in other instruments, but mainly it's violin and vocals. And I write music, I compose, and I'm in a group called Time for Three. That's my band. And I've been in there for 9 years now. I joined about 9 years ago. And it's a lot of fun. I get to tour with my band. I get to tour doing some solo work. And just...
Living the life.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky, man. We get to do what we love to do. And it hasn't stopped. We went to school for it. It's like being a wizard, at Hogwarts.
You grew up in Austin, not too far from where I grew up.
Yeah.
It's probably a 4 or 5 hour drive.
Is it really?
I think so. I've got cousins in Austin.
Wow.
And I've been there once. The only time I was in Austin, it was actually for my brother's bachelor party.
Good place to have a bachelor party.
For sure.
Yeah.
But it got a little wild because at the time there was this app called Bird.
Oh, yeah.
Scooters. Have you ever used?
Oh, yeah.
You scoot around town some, don't you?
I skateboard. Yeah.
Skateboard.
I have a motorized skateboard. Yeah.
Motorized skateboard.
But birding. Yeah. Bird and limes. Yeah.
So it was this app and kind of like, I guess, like Uber for scooter. And it got a little dangerous though, because at the end of like the last night, we had this race. And we were like, who can get back to the hotel fastest?
Downtown.
Yeah, I think it was downtown. Yeah. But none of us got hurt, fortunately. But on the way, we saw this, I think it was this girl who had like just face planted from being on a bird.
Oh, God.
And, we had to call the ambulance and everything. But I guess if you're not experienced, if you don't do it a lot, it can be a little dangerous.
And I think that's maybe why there's no more birds.
Is that right?
I actually don't know. I know we had Revel here in New York.
What's Revel?
Revel was those during the pandemic. They had these like moped scooters that you can just rent.
Okay.
And take around the city.
Wow.
And it was awesome. It was so cool. But then I think people got hurt and no longer.
I guess as a violinist, it's a little more convenient. I can't do that with my cello, but
that is
if
true.
you got a rehearsal downtown or uptown,
I don't know. You can get a skateboard.
That's true.
Get a skateboard, and
that's true. I know a few people who've done that on like. Someone told me that. Well, I should say that. There's someone who's known for biking around town with a cello on his back.
Really?
Yeah. I'll tell you later.
That's a sight to behold.
I don't want to call anyone out. I mean, power to you.
No, that's pretty cool.
So another thing about your Austin connection, you actually have a day named after you in Austin.
I do.
Charles Yang Day. How did that happen? What is that about?
I do have a day, and it's specifically that day that year.
That day that year.
That day that year. So, and I didn't know this, but if I got a parking ticket or whatever, they would have cleared it on that day. And no one knows my day. My mom doesn't even know my day. I don't know my day, but it's something cool. It's something cool to have. And
what happens on Charles Yang Day?
Huge. I mean, you've heard of South by Southwest, right? Yeah. It's bigger than that.
Really?
It's huge. Yeah. Charles Yang Day is one of the biggest. CYD is what they call it.
Okay.
Charles Yang Day.
I assume this was something music related. That
yeah,
was the mayor who awarded you this.
The mayor
day.
at the time. I was in high school. I was on this show called From the Top, as you know.
You've been on From the Top.
Yeah, you've been on From the Top, and our friend Peter Dugan is now the host.
That's awesome.
So I was on the show called From the Top. It was actually a new PBS show that they were doing. They were trying that won a couple Emmys, but it was a PBS show that From the Top started doing video at Carnegie Hall, live shows at Carnegie Hall. So I was one of the, I think the first or second season, I forget, but I was one of the first to do it, and they did this kind of backlog, what does Charles do at home kind of video in Austin, where they brought a camera crew down. All my friends came, and I walked around town asking people, do you know what Charles Yang Day is? And everyone said no. And it was, and so that was part of it too.
Okay.
But I think I don't remember why I was chosen by the Texas Commissioner of the Arts. I think it was this grant that they gave kids to pursue their dreams, and it was wonderful. And I think it's still going on. But yeah, they were the ones that did it. I played at City Hall, and they gave me a day.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
that is amazing. Well, I aspire someday to have a John Henry Day.
I think so.
I think everyone should aspire to have a day of the year.
Yeah,
other than their birthday.
Let's get you a day. Let you choose what town. We'll get you a day.
Yeah. Maybe I could pull it off in Louisiana. But so I want to talk to you about something that happened recently, which is the Grammys.
Oh, the Grammys.
Because you have experience with the Grammys. And
I do.
Before we get into that, though, could you tell me a little bit about your journey with Time for Three? Because it was a group that I actually knew about growing up when I went to school in Philadelphia, to Curtis.
Right.
It was the first time I heard the group play. It was a little different setup in terms of personnel, but you joined them, it's been what, close to 10 years now ago?
Yeah, about 9 years, okay. I think. Yeah.
And before that, you went to Juilliard. I mean, you're very humble. You didn't say like your training and everything, but like you're like a serious, really dedicated violinist. Went to Juilliard, performed all sorts of concertos. There's a video I saw of you playing Korngold concerto.
There's just Korngold,
ripping it up. It's just awesome.
Well, thank you. I'm blushing now.
But how did that come about? Like, I know they probably had a vacancy. Did you have to audition? How did you get to know those guys?
Yeah, Time for Three. You know, I had heard about them too when I was in school. You know, I was living with a bass player. So Time for Three, first of all, for y'all that have never heard of us, it's 2 violins and a bass. It's 3 of us. So Nick, the other violinist, and Renan is our bass player. And yeah, when I was at school, I had heard about this group. They came out of Curtis. They're about 10 years older than me. So when I was in school, Time for Three was kind of taking off. They had a career going of it within the classical world, but doing different things, making arrangements, improvising, and just having concertos written for them as well. So it was really cool to see that. You know, when I was at Juilliard, I was kind of improvising, doing this, you know, the solo violin thing, but also making kind of like these YouTube videos of arrangements that I loved, and I just did it at a Juilliard practice room, you know, illegally. And it was cool to see that there was a group doing that professionally, and there was a place for that, you know. My roommate at the time, PJ, bass player, showed me a video of them playing, I think it was Hallelujah, something that now I play a lot with them, an arrangement of Hallelujah, and I remember being like, wow, these guys can really play, but they're also really creative.
Yeah.
At the time, it was a violinist named Zach DePue, who also, so they formed at Curtis. The 3 guys formed there after, you know, orchestra rehearsals. They would just get together and jam, and
that's really cool.
Out came a band, you know. So, you know, Zach ended up becoming concertmaster of Indianapolis. Now he's concertmaster of Naples. That was the life that he wanted, you know. And the touring wasn't really for him, I guess. So they had Nikki Chewy for like a year, about half a year. And then out of the blue, I got a call from Nick, who I knew, but not very well. I would hear from Nick maybe once a year, you know. And I got a call. I didn't pick up. I went to voicemail, but I knew what it was about, you know. I knew that something was up. And yeah, he was just asking. He was like, hey, would love to have you. We're looking for another member. Would love to for you to come jam with us at Renan's place. So,
And was this in Philly or New York or
yeah, Renan lives in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
New Jersey?
Yeah.
Okay.
In Nixon, DC, I was here, and yeah, so I just rented a car and went over there, and we just kind of dated, just like courted each other to see if it would fit.
Yeah.
And by the hour was up and we're already kind of looking at our schedules and being like, can we make this work?
Yeah.
It was just, it's a rare thing to find, classical musicians that speak your language, that can, went to school for it, that play all the standards, but also want to improvise and want to write. And yeah, it was serendipitous for sure.
Well, I just remember when like that announcement happened, I was like, oh, well, that's the perfect guy for Charlie. Because I knew about you beforehand. And I think it was probably from the top.
Yeah.
Because, I had a couple times where I was on the show and was always keeping my eye out just to see who else was on there. And I remember that Carnegie feature where they had I think it was a couple seasons.
I think it was 2 or 3, I forget.
Yeah.
It was great.
You were one of the the standout people from that, and the fact that you were doing that already and had been playing around with that, I think is a testament to the fact that it jives so well, the three of you.
Well, vice versa. It's like I didn't meet you. When did I meet you for the first time? I think probably at Starbucks or
yeah, it was not that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago, but I had known about you because of your videos that you filmed. Beautifully made,
no, I'm blushing.
Beautiful. But seriously, that's. We'll probably get into it, but in today's time, how do you get to know other musicians, or how do people find you? That's it.
Yeah, it's a huge question, and everything's changed so fast in the past 10 years, even. It's like, can you make it happen without being on the internet? And sometimes I have a conflict because I read these books like Cal Newport. I don't know if you've heard of his stuff, but he writes these books about digital minimalism and how if you're really trying to get a lot of stuff done, you don't need Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff. But I feel like for what we do, it's totally crucial. Just if you're writing research papers and all that stuff, stay focused, stay off the gram.
Right.
But I've also just gotten to know so many people from these platforms and see their work, and there are obviously positives and negatives to all of these things and technology, but overall I think it's been a net positive, just
for sure
being able to discover and meet and enjoy everyone's work.
Exactly. Love it or hate to love it, it's a necessity, for us musicians. It's another form of it, at least.
For sure. So I'm curious, before starting Time for Three, you had this interest in improvisation and singing. Wherever people pushing against that, did you ever feel people were discouraging from doing that, or was it just I'm doing this is what I feel, and it was just something that moved you?
Oh, totally.
People pushed back against it.
Oh God. Really? Especially my own mother, my parents. I feel sometimes I feel like I'm just a cocktail of my upbringing in a way, and I think everybody is.
Yeah.
But I'm an only child. My mom is a violinist. She's in the Austin Symphony, went to conservatory as well in Shanghai and then in Montreal. And my father's a big music lover, not a player, but they had put a violin in my hands, when I was 3. So
wow.
I don't remember I don't remember a time when I didn't know music or play music, but I did remember hating it, and I used to push back on practicing. I didn't want to do it because my mom did it, and I didn't sound good, and I didn't think that I could be something. And every time I practiced, it was for my parents, They would send me to piano lessons, and my mom would teach me, and it just seemed like a chore. It wasn't until I started practicing on my own for myself. Mm. Yeah. Or when I would go and jam with my friends in middle school who had a blues band, they just picked up guitars and stuff. and asked me to come jam with them, that's when it kind of opened my eyes to music. It's like, oh, music is not just a chore. It's something that it's a group activity. Like people want to hear me, people want to play with me, and maybe want to get better. But because of all that, because of that, and I'm so grateful for my parents for making me do it, making me practice. Without that, I don't know what I'd be doing, really. And then also without my friends, introducing me to the blues and classic rock, I don't think my interest and my love for music would have really blossomed the way it is now, So that kind of combination, me pushing back with my parents, also my friends not knowing anything about classical music, me pushing classical music onto them.
It's a nice give and take.
It was, it was eye-opening, and like that kind of cocktail really pushed me, and I started, I even realized, oh man, I'm getting a lot better day by day, because I had interest in doing it, and I'm also ADD, so I was really zoned in and doing something really well, and getting good at that. Schoolwork, not so much, but I had a lot of pushback. Even up until college, like I did choir in high school, and I loved singing. I loved to sing. Was never trained, but and then I would always play violin and sing. It felt normal to me. My friends were like, "That's weird, but it's cool." And to my parents, it was like, "Stop singing. You have to practice your Tchaikovsky."
Interesting.
What are you doing?
I mean, it makes perfect sense though, just logically. Like if you're in choir and you're taking violin, put them together, right?
Yeah.
But it's like not the norm. It's not something that you see every day.
Yeah.
And, like when I think about trying to play the cello, and like I've tried a couple times, I've never really been like, okay, I'm really going to sit down and figure out how to do this. But whenever I try, just for fun, it's like it does feel a little bit like rubbing your tummy while you pat your head.
Yeah.
But what age were you when this interest started to like grow? Because for me, there was a moment where it was like the catalyst, and I was like, I want to do that. And it was like this concert.
What was it for you?
It was this concert. I was like 11 years old, and it was our Suzuki school. My mom runs a Suzuki program, and we played with the Shreveport Symphony. It was like a Home for the Holidays concert, and it was like I played Vivaldi double in this big group, but then there was this cello soloist who came and played Rococo, and I was like, whoa, I want to do that.
It's a cool song.
It's a cool song, yeah. And that's what really was the spark. And then I got practicing more. But for you, was there like a moment, or it's just like you're jamming with your friends and it kind of grows over time?
I don't think there was I never had a specific moment like you that I remember it being like, whoa, I want to do that. I think I was so, growing up, seeing my mom playing every day, that was just like what violin should sound like, and then going to her concerts with the Austin Symphony, or Perlman would come in, and all these artists would come in, and I go to that, and of course it was amazing, but I don't remember it being like, that's what I want to do. But it was like these little small moments. One for sure was going over to my buddy's house, where they had just learned how to play guitar, bass, and drums, and I had learned violin already for like 10 years at that point. And they asked me if I wanted to jam, and I asked them if they had music for me. And they said, oh, we don't know how to read music. Like we just know the blues. And they taught me the 12-bar blues, and they taught me how to play on top of that, the scale that I could use for that. And that, for me, opened up a whole side of music that for the past 10 years of my playing at that point was just, again, like I was saying, like a chore, like almost like I was practicing for practicing's sake. Now there was function within it, and like to play a G blues, and what notes work on a G blues. Is it
pentatonic?
It's pentatonic.
It's pentatonic scale. Okay.
And then the pentatonic blues scale. Yeah, exactly. But the pentatonic in itself, or you could, in any classic rock song or pop song, you could mess around. You know, I was messing around with just G major scale, you know, and finding notes that sounded cool on top of that. But knowing the function of that scale no longer was just for my intonation, just for my, you know, form. It was functional. And that, when I went back to practicing scales, I wanted to do that. And I wanted, at like playing the Bruch violin concerto, the opening, I realized, oh, that's just a G minor arpeggio. You know, all of these things.
Look at everything through a different lens. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really cool. And Bach definitely was a lot of fun after that. So that was a big moment of like, whoa. First of all, the big moment was me showing up there, and they all knew I'd played violin for like 10 years. And I was embarrassed that they didn't, you know, have music. I was scared, but then I threw myself out there and like, show me how to do this. And I'm so glad I did, you know. That was, it made no sense to me that I could play up and down the neck by that point, but didn't know how to make something up, you know. So that was a new muscle that I was learning to flex. And
yeah. Well, I feel like sometimes it takes you kind of leaping, like it takes a little bit of a leap of faith or a risk or feel like overcoming a fear of failure. Yeah. Where, you know, if there's a new technique or a new style you're not sure about, you just got to dive in sometimes, and you figure it out. Like you can, if you're a musician and you've trained, you know, this hard on certain things, you know, it's like diving into a different pool, you know. Totally. You're going to figure out how to swim after a while.
I mean, I'm surprised with you though. Like your mother runs a Suzuki school, and you grew up with that. Yeah. Your brothers played?
Yeah. So all three of my brothers played, three little brothers. Yeah. And we alternated violin, cello. Wow. I think that was like to avoid competition, you know, so we weren't competing with each other. But yeah, it absolutely helped, you know, being in that environment. And
did you feel like it was just something that you were just doing this part of the family? Like, were you?
Yeah. I mean, so growing up, before I like officially started, you know, I see pictures of me like trying to climb on my brother's cello while he's playing. Yeah. And so I guess I was just around it to where it was normal. And when I look back, like if I try to imagine my life without music or without the cello, it's like I can't really picture what it would be like. It'd be something different. And it's not like, you know, that you have to have this or life's not meaningful. But it's like it definitely gave me this way of looking at the world and this way of expressing myself that, you know, helped me in so many ways socially, in my academic life. I think it probably helped to some degree, but you know, mainly like just being able to collaborate with people, to meet people, and to have that connection. Yeah. You know, it's so cliche, you know, the whole idea of music being a universal language, but it's really like, you know, whether you're playing soccer, whether you're doing tennis, whether it's chess, anything that's like a shared experience, music, I think, has qualities that make it, you know, a whole lot more impactful. Like, it's so involved with emotion. Right. And I mean, there are even all these, you know, experiments done where like they have heart rate monitors on the audience and the players, and they kind of start to
yeah. But my buddy Joe actually did that. Joe Sabia.
Really?
Someone you should get on the podcast. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he actually did that experiment.
And was it with audience members, or was it actually conductor and
Yuja, conductor, and audience, some audience? Yeah. Wow. Just to see where the climax of the piece, if they all really cool. Have the same heart rate.
This is Rachmaninoff, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The rock concertos. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to dive in more with that and learn more about just how all that works. But yeah. Okay, so going back to the Grammys.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah! That
was jumping all around here.
I like that.
Y'all recorded this album in 2021, 22? Letters for the Future.
We won for 23.
You won for 23.
Yeah.
Okay. So how long was the process? Because it's such a big undertaking. You've got you know, 2 concertos, one that's a recent commission, right? With Kevin Putz, Jennifer Higdon. Yeah. And Philadelphia Orchestra, Time for 3, and our dear friend Adam Abeshouse, the late Adam Abeshouse, producer. How long did that whole process take? I mean, from start to finish. I imagine it was years in the making.
Okay, we'll start with Jen with the Higdon Concerto. That was the first concerto ever written for Time for Three.
Okay.
So this was written before I joined the band. Never recorded. I mean, there were never released recordings. Um, and so here's a concerto that the guys had commissioned pretty much in school. You know, Jen was teaching there, um, and it was their first break of like a giant composer writing for them for a group that has never been two violins and bass. There's no repertoire for that.
Oh, that's right. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, except for this recently discovered Mozart piece.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it like a trio sonata or something for two violins and
Yeah,
continuo?
it's something like that. I mean,
Wow.
I barely gave it. I should listen to it. But there really is. There's nothing really. So when they commissioned this from Jen, you know, even Jen has said it's like, wow, these are colors that I've never worked with. You know, and she really catered towards what Time for Three was at that time. Which was, you know, Zach is big in the bluegrass scene, like the fiddling, and him and his brothers, you know, have a band and they just fiddle. And Renan plays some jazz, and Nick, you know, at the time was doing a lot of percussive things. So they got together with Jen. Jen would record them and sometimes transcribe. These is great stories. I wasn't there, but they tell it all the time, but Jen would transcribe what they were improvising and then put it to paper, give it to them. And the guys would later get it and be like, Jen, this is impossible to play. And then she'd be like, that's
what you played.
What you improvise. And
Wow.
I just wrote it down. So a lot of that was really interesting. It was like a time capsule, you know, of what Time for Three was as a baby, in their infancy, with a giant composer like Jen. And when I joined the band, you know, I had to I was already by then the third interpreter. Nikki had played it once, a couple times, I think. And then I was the third interpreter of this piece. So, you know, it was really fascinating to find what the band was at that time, you know, when we were learning it, rediscovering this piece, and especially before the recording, you know, like really finding details that even the guys were like, whoa, didn't even realize this, you know. This kind of reminds me of this brook, or like running water, or like, you know.
Like imagery
Yeah,
to go along with it.
That was very different from how they approached it before. So that was fun to do. That was really fun to work on a piece that they had done a million times, and then me come in and, you know, we had performed it a lot by then already, but for a recording, it's like finding new intricate things.
Yeah, and there's pressure, like when you lay something down on a record, it's like, you know, this is like, it's gonna last for a while, you know.
Yeah.
And I've been on that, in that situation where like something's new, and maybe I learned this kind of, it's like a lesson I learned from some of my earlier recordings. It's like I had this piece that I knew really well, and I'd played it for a decade, and then I was like looking for something else to pair it with. And there was this other sonata that I was just learning. And so I was like, okay, I'll put it with that. And like, you know, in a month I got it like good enough to put on record. But like looking back, it's so much nicer to have that experience where you've played it a few times. You kind of know what you're about and what you want to say with it. But needless to say, I mean, the record that y'all put out is amazing, and you won the Grammy for it.
No, I totally get you on that, you know, and it's something that we know. Were these two pieces new, or were these
my
yeah.
So one of them, well, I'll just say the Ligeti Sonata.
Oh, cool.
Is what I recorded that I had known for like a decade.
Right.
And then Brahms F Major. Also I had played at least for 10 years. And so those were like, you know, buddies that I'd known. Yeah. You know, old friends. And then I was like looking for something else to put it with, and I happened to be learning the Shostakovich Sonata, and it's like, okay, maybe this could go. So,
wow,
you know, there were a couple of movements from that I just like had learned like within 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And had to put it together. But Adam, being the genius that he was,
you
know, he knew exactly what to do and how to like guide me to make it to where I at least knew, like, sounded like I knew what I was doing.
That's amazing. Yeah. No, that's you know, Yeah, it's crazy. You're saying Shostakovich, and it's like a new friend almost, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think also, and this is probably a something not a good habit to get into, but Shostakovich is one of those composers where, like, if you interpret it not perfectly, there's a little bit of wiggle room for that. Whereas, like,
Sure.
with Beethoven, or there's so many interpretations of that.
Right.
That if you do something really out of the zone in Beethoven or Brahms, it's like,
Okay.
people notice. But with Shostakovich, it's like, if you play a lot of it at the right time and the right, it does speak for itself.
And
in a way,
that's the same thing with new concertos, right? Or new pieces. Like Jen's piece, I never got a recording of how they used to play it.
Really?
Before I learned it. I didn't want it,
Yeah.
because I wanted to this is a piece that was never publicly put out at the time, when I was learning the concerto, and I wanted to learn it the way I would learn it, and I find that fascinating too. It's like when you're birthing a piece, when you're giving life to a new piece that was the composer's still alive, there is a lot of leeway, but also not at the same time, because you want to do it justice, and you want to at least be honest with it, and for a while when we were performing the piece, I didn't, I didn't get it, it wasn't until right before the recording, when we were diving in, that it's like, okay, I can see an angle on this, but going to that, we never planned on recording these two pieces, like
Really?
making this record,
Did the stars just align, or like?
Yeah, it was a silver lining kind of a thing, but
Okay.
Jen's concerto, which is called Concerto for Three, we had been performing. That was the concerto we were playing the most, up until the pandemic. We didn't have Kevin's concerto yet. We had her concerto and Dave Brubeck. Chris Brubeck, not Dave. Wrote a concerto called Travels in Time for Three. A great piece, really fun, kind of jazzy piece, and also written before my time. So we would tour these quite a bit. But then we needed a new concerto. When we commissioned Kevin to write this concerto, we had been a big fan of Kevin. Kevin came and saw us play in so many different kinds of venues, just to kind of learn who we were, what colors he was going to work with.
I like that kind of like scouting out, doing research.
You gotta, and he was doing his research when we got the first draft. This was in 2019, I think, was like the first draft, or maybe the early bits of 2020. I forget, but it already felt tailor-made, like it was, everything worked. And of course we worked with him on parts, and then we started doing more on the concerto, but it felt like he got us,
Even from the first note, I mean, from the very beginning of the piece, I feel like it's made for you because you're singing.
Yeah. He really loved that.
It's kind of this a cappella style, all three of you, right?
All three of us.
All three of you.
And from this, Kevin asked us a bunch of questions before writing for us, and I think it was Nick that said, like, we're, although it's two violins and a bass, there's never any opposition within the violin. We're one sound. We're not three individual soloists. We are the soloists.
It's like one big instrument.
One big instrument.
Cool.
And so Kevin loved that. And in his concerto, it starts off with us all singing a note in unison before breaking off into three-part harmony,
Wow.
which is so beautiful. And that was always there. That was there from the first draft, I believe. That was there from the first draft. And we already had, lined up our San Francisco Symphony West Coast premiere, Philadelphia Orchestra East Coast premiere, and then 2020 happened.
Oh.
So, everything got canceled. We weren't sure. We hadn't even heard the piece with orchestra,
You hadn't got to play it yet. Well,
never got to play it. And so it was just shelved for a bit. And the three of us were in separate cities. We didn't really get to, for about a year, what was untouched. And then things got a little better And then we all got together again with Kevin, and we reworked a lot of it was a silver lining moment. We reworked this concerto until it was totally tailor-made.
That's nice to be able to take your time rather than, having a piece come and then like you have 6 months to get it down
Yes.
and then record, right? You get
Totally.
to kind of live with it. You learn it. You kind of, marinates.
Yeah.
I feel like that sounds like an ideal scenario.
We weren't even doing it for any reason. We weren't sure when we would actually hear the piece. Yeah. It was just, we had this time now. The world kind of weirdly opened up after a little bit, and we kept our distance, but we reworked the piece for the future, whenever that was,
Letters for the future.
Letters for the future. So I remember us just being in my apartment, my old apartment uptown, in masks. We would just go over this concerto. Then at Terezio, Carlos opened his space up for us to just kind of work with distance. And then the idea came about, well, we're not going to perform this for a while. Why don't we record it? We have the greatest team. Our management, like David Lai and Ross Michaels, and Ina at the time, who's now my manager. They just came up with the idea of like, okay, let's get this ball rolling. Got Philly Orchestra. They were on board. And then Xian Zhang, the great conductor from New Jersey, she was on board. So we had this green light of like, okay, but they gave us 2 days, 2 concertos.
That's a lot.
Did I get that right? Or is it 1 day? It was 2 days. Yeah. They gave us 2 days. One concerto we've never heard in our lives before. The other we knew quite well, but still, we're recording. So
does that include rehearsal? Or
the rehearsal was being recorded.
Oh my gosh.
So everything
was
nerve-wracking. Yeah. And then full takes.
Wow.
So that was an experience, but my God, like the Philly Orchestra, they poured their heart into this because, first of all, they weren't playing either, We were barely playing at the time. And then, so this all came together. Adam Abe's house, wonderful, the greatest ear, just knew exactly how to run the session. And
how did y'all come to know him? Had one of you worked with him before, or was it through David?
Yeah. So David knew him well.
Okay. Okay.
And Adam, we had worked with him during the pandemic for some virtual concerts.
Gotcha.
You remember those?
Yeah, I do.
At the Domena Center, and we just fell in love with him. This was
literally a legend. I mean,
a legend. No one else will ever be Adam.
I know.
There's no one.
I've been,
and we're so lucky that we got to work with him. And how special of a family he has that he left behind.
Well, it's a tough art, and someday I'd love to have. I mean, I to be able to talk to Adam like this would be amazing.
Yeah.
But I know there are people like him, and to talk about that process, because there's a whole art to being a producer and setting the artist at ease.
Yeah.
And especially when you have conditions like that where it's like you don't get to rehearse. It's just
hit
record, let's play, and let's make it happen. But
so many times, you probably know this too. It's like you don't think you got it.
Yeah.
And he's like, we got it.
We got it.
Through the intercom, just like, move on.
Yeah.
We have it.
Totally.
It's amazing.
But so with the opening, going back to the Kevin Puts piece, concerto.
Yeah.
You guys haven't had like formal voice training, have you? It's all just been organic.
Yeah. I mean,
it sounds like, it's like angels singing the beginning of that piece, and it's also I feel like it captures this American spirit. Really, it's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Did y'all do you rehearse that separately where you're like spending hours on this vocal stuff? Do you practice alone, or how does that work?
No. No, you're just I can't speak for the guy. No, so before I joined the band, Time for Three was an instrumental band. They didn't sing at all.
Oh, I didn't. Okay.
So when I joined, that was something that a big thing, right? The guys knew I sang, and I, I love to sing, and they were gracious enough to fall into that, and embrace it, and wanting to sing background, backup vocals. And then we had 3 extra colors now, after our instruments and bass. It's already a limited band, Now we had 3 more voices.
Yeah, it's
literally.
like you doubled the size of your
Yeah,
your
we
group.
doubled. And then we could songwrite, we could
Wow.
add more textures, and that's something that Kevin loved. He coming to our shows, hearing our songs that we wrote. Kevin's like, I love your 3-part harmony on top of what you're playing. And so when writing the piece, he didn't want to like have a blatant, like, here's a soloistic, Charles sings lyrics kind of moment. No, he wanted us all to be as if one unit, like one sound kind of thing. So the concerto opens that way. And actually at the end of it, in the last movement, the whole orchestra sings the same theme. And whenever we go play that anywhere, you see the audience, and they're like,
Where is this coming from?
yeah, where's this coming from? And it's the orchestra all singing together.
So you really you kind of change the dynamic of the group.
I mean, I think any band, if there's a new member, it changes the DNA.
Sure.
Completely,
I mean, there's that, but you also you brought this, and I'm sure it was there. They had it in their DNA too, but you were kind of, letting them take the risk and do that kind of leap of faith that you did earlier in your life.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that they did, and and weirdly our voices kind of work together, and we of course we had to refine it over time, and it's been years now that we know it. We know each other's ranges and whatnot, but no vocal training. No, I did choir in high school, I said, because I like the girls in choir. That's why I joined. But ended up falling in love with singing.
Yeah.
So, and now the guys as well, they love to sing. Our next recording, actually, that we're recording next week is another Kevin he wrote another.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of confidential as of now, but I can tell you it's a Kevin Putz piece.
Okay.
With us and Joyce DiDonato, the singer.
Wow.
So that will be fun.
That is very exciting.
So so the singing part is
well, you all have beautiful voices, and you particularly, one of my favorite, I was playing it as you came in, Vertigo. It's such an amazing work.
Thank you. That's Steve Hackman wrote that for us.
Did he really? Okay.
Steve, another great like-minded musician, that conductor, composer, pianist, everything. And when I joined the band, he heard, oh, there's this new kid that sings. Let me write this piece. And that was one of the first things he wrote for Time for Three.
Wow.
And yeah.
It's awesome. I could listen to it on loop.
Well,
and I have been.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Okay, so going back for the last time to the Grammys.
The Grammys.
What was the energy like there? Because, when you got nominated, I'm sure that was just
yeah, your
world is just
yeah. Well,
this is crazy. It must be hard to believe when you got nominated and then actually winning. What was that emotionally like?
Well, not the funny thing, the beautiful thing about it is that we went into this project not expecting to apply. You have to put yourself out there to,
a lot of people will apply just because it's routine to submit your work.
Yeah, submit your work, see if your peers like it or not. But we were at that time recording this because we just literally needed to get this work out. We knew how beautiful and genius Kevin's work was, on top of Jen's concerto that we've been doing for a while. And we finally had this product, Deutsche Grammophon. We got a great label to put it out. And then the world opened up again, and we put this record out there, and, people started listening. People started loving it. And that was already just like, oh man, there's no greater feeling than that. But then, of course, the nomination happened, and there was another kind of pure bliss moment.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Of years of not touring, not knowing where this piece was going to go, and then suddenly there's accolades.
Well, I feel like also because of it was coming through this dark time, all of the music itself is so uplifting and like exciting, and especially the way it began. I mean, it's just so optimistic, and I feel like seeing that kind of light at the end of the tunnel for people, giving people inspiration, hope, that must have been a big part of it, and the reason people responded so well to it.
Well, we hope so. Happened. I mean, Kevin, for one, the title is Contact, and it took on a completely different meaning once the pandemic hit. How much we lost human connection.
Yeah,
and so many of those movements are about human connection, especially the last movement, Convivium, which means a big party. It's everyone celebrating together. I think people, even now when we're playing it, for people that come here, a new group that they've never heard of with a new piece of music, they walk away like, wow, like what did I get myself into? This was amazing. That's the kind of feeling that I think translated through the record. And, there's nothing that I'm more proud of for us because of the timing of everything, but also of us bringing this piece to life when we didn't know if it could,
Wow, yeah.
And then the Grammy, the nomination was enough. It really was enough.
Yeah, because they're only like 5 or 6 per category, something like that. I mean,
I think
it's
5.
like just a handful.
Yeah, handful.
So to be like 5 in the world for some category, musically speaking, I mean, that's a huge honor in itself.
Well, yeah, but also I remember I was just walking down the street. I was at Julie Reed's. I was at
violin shop,
and trying out some bows or something, and got the call that we're nominated, and I had to tell Julie I have to take a moment.
Just, to like process this.
I got a little, because then it's like, whoa. Then it hits you that, okay, we're Grammy nominated, like that's talk about universal. For my friends that don't know, classical music or anything, having a new concerto or playing with the Philadelphia Orchestra might not mean anything to them, but the Grammys,
everybody knows about the Grammys.
There was something about that that was like, I don't want to say my ego, but like I was just like in my mind, like, oh man, my friends are gonna know about this.
Yeah. I feel like also for our genre, because classical music is like, I think between 1% to 3%, and what you do is something also that it's more expansive than that, because you have so many other influences in your music.
Sure, but even more niche within our thing.
You could say it that way too. But one of the things I do like about it, despite whatever people's feelings toward it. I mean, some people aren't as big a fan of award shows like the Oscars or the Grammys, but one of the things I like is the fact that, as classical musicians and sort of caretakers of these instruments that are hundreds of years old and this tradition that's been around for hundreds of years, is we get to kind of be mentioned in the same sentence or in the same kind of paragraph, same ceremony as all of these like enormous,
as Beyonce,
exactly,
Queen Bee,
exactly. So that is kind of cool. Just the fact that not only that, like that you're in the same sort of the same arena as all these other musicians, but also that people can, as you're saying, know what that's about and recognize that as an accomplishment.
Well, it just like, it just hit me at that moment. I remember in that moment I thought of that. It doesn't feel that way at all. Like I'm not going around the street like I'm a Grammy winner. Never. I actually now shy away from. I don't even have the Grammy at home. It got sent to my parents' house.
You keep it in a vault. Okay. Okay.
But like it is important in a way in classical music, and all your friends that support you, that might not be classical music, goers or concert goers or lovers, to champion their friend within a category. It suddenly broadens that whole net of like people that, might want to watch the Grammys and find out, who's this? Who's that? I'm going to check this out,
For sure.
And I think that that's a big part of what Time for Three is, for sure. It's like trying to, be inclusive
Yeah. Yeah.
within the concert hall. But yeah, we didn't expect the nomination. We got the nomination and it was great, and then went to the Grammys. Did not expect at all to win. We were up against some big names, and all great records. Not to say that the record didn't deserve a Grammy. We just didn't expect it. We were these kids, we even got really like kind of jokey about it. It's like, well, who's going to talk when we go up there? And it was like, oh, the three of us should talk, and then we get to the Grammys and the announcer says, if your band gets called, only one of you can talk.
Oh. So you had a designated talker.
Yeah, we drew straws. I mean, we all ended up saying something, a little something, but Nick talked because he's the best talker out of us. But yeah, I remember just feeling really relaxed because I didn't think
it had to be a fun time. I mean, it
was a fun time.
There's music, right? Do you remember? Were there performers that you would like?
Samira Joy, I remember this jazz singer who ended up winning Best New Artist that year. A jazz singer, she's incredible.
There were also some events that happened this year at the Grammys, and we don't have to dive into it, but there were some kind of like newsworthy events that happened. Was there anything crazy that happened your year?
Well, fashion forward, that's for sure. Kanye and was it Bianca? Is that his wife?
I think so.
Yeah, that was interesting, and I didn't watch the whole thing, but that's plastered all over my Instagram and like news. It definitely caught attention.
I remember
I should have wore that at the Grammys. Yeah.
There was some clip I saw, and there was a guy like. It was behind the scenes and they were taking pictures, and of course, all the videos, everything's censored out. But he says, I don't think I can like you can hear him under his breath saying, I don't think I can upload this because I need to keep my job.
After that?
Yeah, like it was in one of these video clips while they're like filming this whole thing happening and people taking the photos, and he says this under his breath, but you can kind of hear it.
That. Yeah. Well, it's uploaded.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope he was first.
It's out there. But did you get to meet any other musicians that you had like known about or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a giant kind of party, especially the night before you have the Grammy nomination party or whatever, and you get to see everyone there in all categories, and actually Pascal Leboeuf won this year too with Acropolis, who is a great composer, great friend, and yeah, I remember our year, we all saw each other and we're like, what's up? It's great. It's a really fun time. And of course, there's the after parties too, where I remember like Olivia Rodrigo's there, Jacob Collier's here, and you all get to kind of talk in a way, even, second degree, even,
That's really cool.
And it's fun.
They got to meet you.
Yeah. I was like, oh, who's that guy? Yeah. But I do remember winning on stage, and then they take you backstage because you have to walk to go take photos with your trophy. And by the way, that trophy you don't get to keep. That's not the trophy you keep. That's just a onstage trophy, and then they mail it to you much later.
Wow.
But yeah, I remember walking this catacomb of a maze just to get to the press first. And we got to the press. And it
was like a whole paparazzi situation.
It's
there.
like a bunch of cameras and then a screen with a bunch of people on Zoom that can ask you questions and whatnot,
Wow.
And we got there and they're like, any questions? Silence, complete silence. And we're like, okay. It was a real humbling experience. We were on the high of winning, and then suddenly it's like, okay, no one really cares. But yeah, backstage there, I got to see Molly Tuttle, a whole bunch of artists that I can't even. Jack Antonoff was somewhere there, and it was awesome.
Yeah,
it's really cool. It's a cool experience for sure.
You moving on from the Grammys, you co-wrote an original score for the feature film Land.
Yeah,
it was in 2021.
Yeah.
What is the process like for scoring a film versus, say, doing an arrangement of another piece? I mean, do you have to fit into like certain time frames, and is there like kind of prompts for each track or each scene? What is that like?
So this was another one of those, I can't believe I got to do this kind of moment, but we were planning on doing this, they had already gotten us to do this score before the pandemic. So we were planning on getting in a studio with Ben Sollee, it was Time for Three and Ben Sollee.
Like co-writing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ben was already on board, great cellist, singer-songwriter. And we were all supposed to be in a studio with Robin Wright and with everyone together finding, what the score was going to be. But then the pandemic hit. And then all of us were in separate places again. Ben was in Louisville, Kentucky. I was right across the street. Nick in DC and Renan in Cherry Hill. So we've never scored a film before. Ben had. We had to write a whole film score through Dropbox and Zoom.
Oh, wow. That's...
that one in experience.
Very compartmentalized, yeah.
Yeah. And...
in your own individual apartments, I guess, I take it.
In our own individual apartments, we ended up finding a rhythm of like how things, someone would send something in, we'd build on top of that.
Okay.
And, but, I've never written for film, and that was such a unique experience on its own to get the visuals before the music. I mean,
I was going to ask, do you get to see the film before? I mean,
yeah,
you get to see it all. Okay.
Well, you see, the non-completed version, but
Gotcha.
they send you the clips
like a rough cut.
Yeah, the clips that need music too, and whatnot. But you and I both know, like, as instrumentalists, like, we interpret the music for others to kind of visualize what that is.
Yeah.
Right? That's a normal thing for us, but to
have it happen like upside down or backwards.
was
I imagine that's
so unique, but so fun. Now when I'm writing music, I usually put on something on YouTube just to inspire my creativity. I love it. It's great,
that's cool.
Rather than to like dig deep in here.
Well, that's a whole new topic I would love to get your thoughts on, because like when I think of like writing music, it's like, well, where do you start? Do you start like on the instrument? And different composers, they start on different, I mean, so many composers write from the piano, I know, but
you're right.
There are other composers who might write on the cello or the violin, or I mean, when I think of like, the Paganinis and the Sarasates of the world,
they had an instrument.
It's all from here, from the fingers. But there are others who it's just kind of from this internal headspace. But going to YouTube, I mean, that's such a brilliant idea, because there's so much out there, and like you can find different genres, get different, like a wide range of inspiration.
Totally.
So you turn on some YouTube, you start kind of...
Well, now I do. I mean, but then it was all these cues, what they call them. Okay. And they'd send you the clip, and then you watch it over and over again, and just write from nothing, just kind of take that as an example and write. And that was such an experience, not having, and I actually like it. I like writing alone sometimes, because I can really be in my head, and I have all these instruments at home. I have guitars, basses, and
really?
I have a whole music.
That's cool.
I have a whole guitar center at home.
That's amazing.
So I got to use all of them, and then I pass it on to Nick, pass it on to Renan, and then Ben, and then sometimes it's vice versa.
Okay.
And then we came up with a whole score just doing that,
It's like, it's a lot of tracks. It's like at least a dozen tracks?
I think there were like 20 something cues.
Wow.
From what I remember. But yeah, we finally, when the world opened up, had a chance we had all these demos that, they had approved. And also, by the way, we would write like a good 10 cues for 10 pieces for one cue, like and then they would pick sometimes none of them. We have to go back to the drawing board or just pick one, you know?
Wow.
So it was a process, but we had all these demos that they had already okayed, and then they got us a studio here in New York. We all got together to go re-record them in like the perfect setting and a recording space, and we did. And then Robin Wright said, "I like the demos. I like the demos that y'all did at home, and some of them like you could hear street noise and whatnot."
No way.
She liked
just like
raw.
this podcast.
yeah, that's great.
I think we got 3 sirens so far.
It's a keeper.
I know.
It's a keeper. So that's what you're hearing in the movie. It's all raw.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I like that because there is such a like rustic quality to the music.
Yeah.
And it captures the mood perfectly. I mean,
well, thank
looking
you,
at,
man.
you know, different scenes, it's so kind of organic and
thank you.
Earthy. It's kind of this, you know, it makes you feel like you're in the environment, you know, in that atmosphere. So ultimately it was a new thing, new territory, but it wasn't like this overwhelming pressure or deadlines. Was it like tight deadlines, or
I mean,
let you know pretty far in advance?
But those limitations are awesome, you know, because you know, now with no limitations and a bunch of touring, like we're man, barely writing, you know. We have to sometimes set those goals, be like, end of the month we need a song, you know.
That's really interesting to hear, because like it's true, limitations can be so comforting, because it's like a hard stop, and like you have to have it by then, whereas like there are projects that I have that are open-ended, like things I just wanted to do personally for years now, and it's like they aren't happening yet.
Yeah, right.
But then like, you know, something else pops up and it's like, you know, gotta get it in by this date and that date, and it's actually kind of comforting to like have that hard stop.
Total. Well, it's also, what is it? They say we only use a certain percentage of our brain or whatever.
Yeah.
I weirdly believe that, you know, it's like when you're up against the clock, suddenly, like that's when the magic happens. Like I like I was saying earlier to you that I got this Baltimore Symphony call while I was at a wedding.
In Mexico.
In Mexico, just hammered on tequila. My agent's like, you got to do this. I had to sub in for a soloist. And it's a piece that I hadn't played in some years. And it was 3 days away.
Oh, wow.
And I had to go deal with this wedding, you know, and be a good kind of friend.
Yeah.
And party and whatnot. But also on the small little time that I had, kind of relearn this piece. And I was so nervous. But when I got the 3 days, I was so confident. I don't know. There's something about like...
Saint-Saëns concerto, you said?
No. It was a new piece.
New piece.
And also Saint-Saëns Rondo Capriccioso.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is like, come on, that's a hard...
That's a hard piece.
Really hard. Like the last page alone.
Yeah. Do you
like,
play on cello?
No. But there are people who do. And
really?
I've seen a couple people with an arrangement, and it's like,
oof, yeah,
you can have that.
Yeah, that last page alone, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But there's something about it. There's a deadline. I knew I only had that much time, and everything was fine, you know?
Wow.
So, yeah, I don't know. The whole film score was definitely that.
Well, it's really cool. And again, you know, your sound and the group sound is perfect for the film. So
thank you, man.
Congratulations on that.
You never know. Like we played a show at the Crypt.
Oh, the Crypt sessions.
The Crypt sections, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Andrew Osley's thing, and we had known Robin, you know, and Alan, the producer, had invited her to one of our shows because she was like, "You should check out this band." She came to our show, this small little show. There's like maybe 50 people there, and there was Robin Wright. And that was what sealed the deal. She said, "I want your sound for my movie."
Wow.
Because of that show. And I keep like pinching myself, like these kind of moments that you never really think are gonna turn into anything. And if she didn't come to the show, if she didn't hear us, we wouldn't have scored a movie. Well, maybe we would have, but like that movie in particular. And it's just crazy how you never know who's going to be in the audience, you know. It's a really fun thing. Yeah.
Well said.
You never know.
Speaking of solo stuff, you have a solo album that came out recently.
I do, yeah, somewhat, yeah.
So it's been a year now, or 6 months.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. But that's still, in release terms, that's recent, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for me.
But it's with American Youth Symphony. It's a concerto that was written. It was written for you.
Yeah.
Okay, and could you tell us a little bit about that? Like, is there a story behind it? Like the name of it is For a Younger Self.
For a Younger Self.
Okay.
This was, this was a first of all, the American Youth Symphony, rest in peace, one of the great, organizations, of our country. My teacher was part of it, Glenn Dick.
Oh, really? Okay.
And one of the Maida brothers created it in LA. And so many of our friends, grew up playing in this orchestra.
Sure.
And it's a pre-professional orchestra. A lot of college kids, mostly college kids, kind of like a New World kind of thing, preparing kids to get into the real world. And they had, I don't know, they heard about me and they wanted to commission a concerto based on, it's called the Korngold Project, where they wanted to get film composers to write concert music. And they had, the year before, they had Gil Shaham and then Sarah Chang before that. So when it came to my year, they asked me who I wanted, and I immediately was like, Chris Bowers. Chris and I went to school together, at Juilliard, and with John Batiste as well. Chris was a brilliant jazz pianist, one Thelonious Monk. But also, like, I would catch him playing Beethoven and Mozart in the practice rooms. He's just a curious mind, trying to do everything really well. But he moved back to LA and became just a star film composer. And this year was Color Purple, at the Grammys, and recently The Wild Robot he did. But his claim to fame was Bridgerton, really.
Okay. Wow.
And so, I hit up Chris and I was like, hey, I got this new thing. Do you want to write a concerto? And he's like, yes. So, we premiered it with AYS at Disney Hall in 2019. And now it, lives on its own.
Released on Orchid, is that right?
Orchid, our label,
yeah.
Our label. So we recorded it. We also recorded that during the pandemic. Okay. I forgot if before or after the Letters for the Future, but we recorded that during the pandemic. Orchid picked it up, and now I get to play it all over the place.
That's really cool. I mean, you sound really fantastic on it.
Chris did a great job. Thank you, man. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. My pleasure. So when you joined Time for Three, was there ever, like, as a musician coming on board and joining a group that's been around a while, what kind of pressures are there, or did you feel any? Was it just so natural that there was nothing really to learn?
Oh man, there's always something to learn. Well, first of all, learn to be in a band. A band of brothers. Like, they're literally my brothers. I see them more than I see anybody.
I mean, I've spent a little bit of time with y'all. The concert with Adam, y'all played, and just gorgeous. You played Joy and sang Joy, and then a movement kind of arranged from the concerto, Kevin's concerto. But just being around you is so fun, and your rapport, like the way that you get along, it's so great. And I imagine, that's how it is most of the time. Yeah.
Our tour manager Dave Ross, who you met. Yeah. We're all, the four of us travel the world. We're a band of brothers. We will do anything for each other. But we also, there's dynamics within a band. Sure. We love each other. We hate each other sometimes. And, there's fights. And, prior to that, to joining the band, I was mainly a solo artist. I would play with Peter Dugan, who as well. Yeah. And Peter and I are like brothers as well. But being in a band of it is a totally different experience. But
being in different cities, I mean, how does that work with rehearsal or arrangement? If you're all in a different place, is that something that you do remotely, or you make time to be together? And
well, we're together approximately 180 to 200 days out of the year.
So it's
So it's anytime that we're not together, we're like, okay,
gotcha.
Well, I don't want to see you for a couple days. But it's it's people ask, like, how do you how do you rehearse? How do you do? I mean, we find time to do that, but most of the time it's on the road,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
and we all live in big cities with big airports, so it's easy,
So on to something maybe a little bit more serious. Have you ever had a career setback or anything that made you question that music was what you were wanting to do? Or question, whether you should stay in music?
Oh, um,
Or just any general career setback, like, obstacle that you had to overcome?
yeah, definitely. Oh man, so many. So I think time for three before my time as well. I wouldn't say there's been any point where, I didn't want to do music. That's never happened in my mind. Even if it wasn't, violin playing, I would want to do music, I mean, there's so many things I can remember. I let's take it back to Juilliard. My teacher was Glenn Dictorow, who's still such a father figure and a mentor to me. But I remember during my master's, I had already had management. I wasn't getting booked that much. I didn't understand why. Because in my mind, it's like, I can play all these concertos.
You can sing.
I can sing.
Unlike any other violinist.
But I didn't have a product, I was just like still figuring it out. I was improvising in my mind. It's like, why? Well, I'll just improvise something, that's not how it works. And so I was pretty down on that, like I didn't understand the business that well. I just knew that, I could do this. Why don't they just book that? And it wasn't happening. So I remember that year, there was a couple openings in the New York Phil in the violin section. I'd never been like an orchestral player. Not that I don't respect it. I just never enjoyed it, and I never took it seriously, even at school. I'm not good at it. So I took, for the first time, this is Glenn Dictorow, we're talking about, concertmaster of the New York Phil. For the first time since I'd studied with him, I brought in a book of excerpts. And Glenn looked at me and he goes, "Oh, Charlie, I mean, I'm the guy to teach you this. I'm definitely the guy to teach you this. And I think you would win a job, no problem. Like, either New York Phil or somewhere else, you can take auditions and probably win a job."
That's encouraging, to hear your teacher say that, who's in such a great position himself. I mean,
right.
Concertmaster of New York Phil,
But then he said, "But it's not for you."
Really?
I don't think you'd be happy. Charlie, I know you. I know all the things you love to do. And, in my opinion, I'd love to cherish that. I'd love to champion that in those kind of words. I forget exactly. And then we closed the book.
Did you play a note?
Did not play a note. And then we listened to Chrysler recordings, old Hollywood recordings of the Hollywood sound, and and I remember that day being just so inspirational for me. Like, I've never had a mentor like that got me, I get chills still talking about it.
It's hard to also imagine someone like, I don't know him well and I've never met him, but it's hard to imagine someone of that caliber and of that kind of practice, because being so immersed in that world, to be able to tell someone who's very talented and who's your student, I don't think this is for you, and to see that, have the wisdom to see that what you're doing is not necessarily what your student should be doing.
Right.
I feel like that takes a lot of wisdom, but restraint and
totally
kind of respect as a teacher to be able to do that and say, go another path.
And being a teacher, especially in the collegiate time, is an important thing, because your students are becoming their own artist, and he has so many students that are they have jobs all over the globe in orchestras, and he has soloists students, he has chamber musician students, and he has me, like all these different kinds of students.
Yeah.
And not any one of us he treats the same. It's not a cookie cutter thing. And I have so much respect for that, of just being able to kind of know who you're teaching and who you're working with. So that wasn't a setback. That was more of a moment in time that was it was fuel for me, And
Gotcha.
I have the same goes for the guys as well. Management. Some management had told time for three, and myself as well. It's like there's no place in the world for people like for your music.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, the phrase that came to mind that I feel like I say it as a compliment, but maybe some people say it as a cudgel, is like, you don't fit in a box.
Right.
I feel like time for
Right.
three, you're an N
Right.
of one, like you're your own genre almost. And what it reminds me of is actually, like, there's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy, and I think Tony Robbins talks about it a lot.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Like motivational guy.
Yeah.
But it's like, rather than going and fighting it out in the Red Seas, like where it's a bloodbath, and you've got competition and the orchestral world and chamber music. I mean, it's so saturated,
Yeah.
And this, I think it's mainly applying to business and stuff, this blue ocean strategy. But you found a blue ocean, which is this wide open arena of this new frontier, which you're like creating and paving. And I think it's fair to say a lot of people are now emulating some of what y'all do, to
Awesome.
create their
Yeah.
own unique voice as people who, play these instruments with this tradition that's hundreds of years old. But
Right.
you don't fit in a box, and that's what makes you so unique and so special.
Yeah, and that was one of the times for someone I respect so much, my teacher, to say it's okay, that was like, man, the greatest.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The greatest feeling. And, we go around now touring, and there's kids that want to dip their toes and learn how to improvise, but they're too scared to. And when we have a session with them, with multiple kids, and we allow that safe space for them to do that, and you see them just kind of, you see it in their eyes. They have like this kind of performance high too, that sometimes we feel like we don't get anymore, but then you see it through them and like, that's why we do it, and you see these kids wanting to learn so much more.
Yeah.
And that's a great feeling. I kind of like, if I can feel just a little bit of how Glenn treated me, that's my goal,
Well, if we have a few minutes, I'd love to try some of that improvising with you,
Yeah.
to get some of that magic that those kids feel. Because
Yeah.
I'll admit, I mean, it's, other than maybe trying it once or twice in like just a random scenario, improvising is something that's it's totally beyond it's not my wheelhouse. And so it'd be fun to kind of jam for a few minutes and
Let's
just see
do
what
it.
comes out, maybe at the end. So speaking of like breaking genres and being not in a box, there's this video I saw of you. It's House of the Rising Sun. You're singing.
Yeah.
You've got a bandana on.
Yeah.
You're sawing away on the violin, and you're just singing your heart out. And I feel like there's an amount of courage it takes to do something like that. For me, like when I see that, I'm like, man, there's something courageous about it. Like, because maybe it's just like it's not a skill that I've worked on, singing my heart out while I play, something like that. But I'm curious, are there artists outside of classical or in other genres that you have really looked up to that have been really pivotal or really impactful and shaping you as a musician? Like, because we name traditionally, like, we name this soloist and that soloist and this old cellist and that old violinist. They really shaped me as a player, or my teacher. But outside of classical music and violin playing and cello playing, what are some of your musical heroes that give you that kind of courage that I see when you sing and play?
Well, definitely, for one, is one of my biggest heroes is Stevie Ray Vaughan, the guitar player. And growing up, learning the blues and seeing this virtuoso uh, guitar player shredding, and part of a three-piece band, Stevie Ray Vaughan and double trouble. So he had to play rhythm and lead and sing to fill all the gaps, And I always thought that was just magic, This guy was like with a cigarette on his guitar was like all burnt looking,
Wow.
and like all, everything was not your ideal, like, wow, this is like really put together. No, but it sounded like $1,000,000. So Stevie Ray Vaughan was a huge inspiration. I would listen to him and copy his licks, on violin and sometimes on guitar, and just try to get that vibe. And in a way, that it was courage. It was courage for him to like get up there and, be all those roles. But it's also a sense of like shamelessness, of like, I read his biography, and he was not really a singer as well. Like it's hard in the blues too. It's like when you have so many of the great black blues players, and then you're singing, you want to reflect that, but you're not black, and you have to find your own voice within that. And he definitely found that. He was definitely a little nervous about singing, but he did it anyways. And
do you think there's an element of like not knowing what you don't know helps, like being a little bit
totally
naive about it, just like I'm going to do this and
totally
not overthinking?
I miss the days where I wasn't, and I'm still not a complete theory nerd, but like now when I'm writing, sometimes I get too complicated in my head of like, oh, I did this already, or like, oh, might be a little too cheesy, and it gets in my head of if I don't do like a cool inversion there or like a cool substitution, then it's not going to be fun. No, sometimes it's just like raw, not knowing. Stevie didn't know how to read music, but it's all there.
Yeah.
So there's so much soul there. So people like that, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and of course the Beatles, like the songwriting of the Beatles, of Paul McCartney and John Lennon, so simple, but so meaningful. Yeah.
That's a great answer and a great example. Okay. Moving on to some like kind of a bullet round, hardest gig you've ever had, whether technically, mentally, physically, or like travel situation, toughest performance, or maybe it was one of your recordings. I don't know.
Ooh, toughest. Well, I think most stressful was this recent Baltimore Symphony thing.
Okay.
Honestly,
so like
I'm still
week.
A little. Yeah, last week was still a little scarring. Just to be able to go in there as a replacement soloist and with the Baltimore Symphony and with a piece everyone knows.
That's a lot of pressure. Yeah.
I was scared, but it was fine.
Stealing a line from your album for a younger self. If you could go back in time and give young Charles Yang some advice, what would it be? Like maybe 15 years old.
I would say stay curious, but work harder.
Okay.
Yeah, I was very curious as a kid, learning different things, but I wish I worked harder at certain things,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, work harder.
Work harder.
That's good. Always good. If you could collaborate with any artist, living or dead, classical or not, who would it be and why? You already gave kind of an answer for your inspiration. Maybe it could be the same person, but
oh yeah, Stevie Ray Vaughan. To play blues with Stevie would be amazing. I'd have to say, like, maybe not even a collaboration, but just like to be part of the process of of writing a song with Paul McCartney and John Lennon. I think that would be really, that would be a dream.
Good answer. Really good answer. Strangest place you've ever played the violin or done a show
Um,
or played the violin, like if it was just you.
one of the coolest and strangest was definitely in a canyon down the Grand Canyon. Like we went down
No way.
this river trip, and we would just park in these giant caves and just play. Really cool, awesome acoustics, really weird, but awesome.
That is cool. Using nature. I love it.
Yeah.
Any pre-show rituals or habits?
Yeah, I have certain boxers I only wear on,
Really?
on they're briefs, really.
Okay.
I have boxers and briefs. I never wear boxers for show days.
Okay. Well, the audience is going to love this.
Yeah, they got to be briefs. They got to be briefs and
A specific color or brand?
Nope, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Okay.
matter. They have to be briefs. They got to be the stretchy kind. I don't know
Okay.
why.
Keep it stretchy.
Keep it stretchy. And yeah, that's definitely one of them.
Craziest travel story or fan interaction? Because I know you'll have adoring fans and maybe some diehard fans.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's a funny one. And it's happened more than once. We'll play with an orchestra, and then there's a VIP party afterwards, and sometimes some of the orchestra members will come back too. And one time someone on the board was giving a speech. Everyone was giving a speech. He pulled over Nick, pulled over Renan, and then pulls over an Asian guy from the orchestra.
Oh no.
He goes, "Time for 3."
Oh no.
They're and I'm just watching over there, and my bandmates are just looking at me and also trying to get this guy to be like, that's not Charles.
You got the wrong one.
We got the wrong one.
Wow.
And I love those. I love this, and I usually stay in the back.
Well, the fact you can laugh at, I mean, it's
no. I mean,
yeah.
I don't want to embarrass anybody, but they didn't mean it anyways.
Okay, last question. Kind of a tradition I'm trying to start on this show
Go.
is actually for you to ask a question to the audience. The show's Think Music. It can be based off of our conversation. It could be unrelated. It could be what's your favorite color. But, want to get people thinking about music maybe in a different way, or just thinking about music when they didn't before. Take your time, whatever comes to mind. What's a question you might ask the audience? They can maybe reply to in the comments.
Well, it's really good. That's a
Thanks.
thinker. No, you got me thinking. Well, I'll say this: for those that might not be involved in classical music, or have never heard classical music, or don't think they like classical music, and for those that do know classical music, I always keep this in my mind: is Brahms could be new to so many people. Bach could be new music to so many people. It's not that the art form is, a museum piece. It's that some people have never experienced Bach or Brahms. So if you haven't experienced classical music such as Bach or Brahms, think of it as New Music Fridays and just experience it. And for the new music people out there that say, I don't like new music. Well, what does new music even mean? New music, first of all, classical music spans from Bach to Bartok to now. And even elements of indie pop or elements of film music and pop music have classical music elements in there. So open up your mind and just explore, So I guess the question really is, how much do you want to be curious about music?
Yeah. No, that's a great question.
What genre do you listen to?
I like it. No, I mean, you're so right. And so much of what we hear and in all sorts of music originally came from classical, originally came from kind of these more these sort of foundational layers of composing and from Bach all the way up and forward. So thank you for giving us something to think about, Charles. You've been an amazing guest. Appreciate it. Thanks for walking across the street.
Yeah.
And we're gonna jam a little.
Yeah, let's do a little pluckies, man. Let's do it.